I'm Sally Kirkman from sallykirkman.com, and I'm here with Christina Rodenbeck from oxfordastrology.com. And together we are Astrology Talk, and we're going to talk to you about this month's astrology. We start by looking at the month that's gone, and then we're going to be looking at the equinox as the sun moves into Libra, and we'll be looking at the major astrology of the month ahead and what it means for you. And we are moving into eclipse season. That's going to be one of the big themes coming up. But first, let's have a look at what's been and gone. How are you, Christina? Have you survived Mercury retrograde?
Well, it's been quite a chaotic little old month. Everything's, we had a bit of a sort of family crisis last weekend because my daughter was taken to hospital with appendicitis, but thank God for the NHS. Thank you, John Radcliffe Hospital and everybody there. She's back home and recovering, full of codeine, which has rendered her utterly charming. Interestingly enough, the Jupiter has been stationing on her sun.
Okay.
So when we say stationing, it means that Jupiter was about to turn retrograde. It's actually standing still in the sky directly on my daughter's sun. And Jupiter is a very lucky planet, but it also magnifies things. Mm-hmm. And also she had a Chiron, which is the wounded healer, the asteroid known as the wounded healer, which sometimes turns up when you have these sort of crises or when you have an initiation or something dramatic. She actually has the exact square at the moment to her natal Chiron. So and there were other factors too, but I thought it's interesting because we always talk about how Jupiter is great. It's going to be fantastic. How marvelous when it's on your sun. And actually it is. And I think that although it magnified something, maybe it brought it to light. We were incredibly just lucky in every way with this crisis because she'd just come back from Portugal. Could have happened there. She hasn't gone back to university yet. Could have happened there. And the hospitals in Brighton are not as good as the one here in Oxford. And and she's at home with her parents, and she can be looked after. So it's incredibly lucky. And so she's had protection.
Yeah, and I was going to say it is a protective influence, isn't it? You would expect it to turn out well.
Yeah, exactly. You would expect that.
Yeah. Well, I've been teaching astrology in Greece during this Mercury retrograde, and obviously a bit nervous about getting out there on Mercury retrograde, so I gave myself plenty of time. And I mean, we did have some great Mercury retrograde stories out there. There was one student, bless her, I know some of you will be listening in, who she missed the connecting flight to Previtsa, which is the nearest airport. So she was put on a flight later that day to Athens. But because of the bad floods out in Greece, the plane never got to Athens. It was diverted to Crete, where they had to overnight. They then she was meant to be getting a plane the next day from Crete to Previtsa. That was also cancelled, bless her, because of bad weather. So she would have ended up turning up 2 days late, missing 2 days of the course. And it was just crazy. I mean, it was like a movie going on, this story around, was she going to make it or was she not? So in the end, she rested in Crete and is doing a course the following week. But I mean, what a Mercury retrograde palaver, really, with that going on. And there've been many stories like that, I think, haven't there?
Oh, I think it's been a really powerful Mercury retrograde. Why? Because it's in Virgo, its own sign, and it's also following on from the Venus retrograde. So we had Venus, and everything else is retrograde too. And this is one of the things we need to talk about, at least briefly, is the incredible disaster of Storm Daniel in the Mediterranean. The biggest biggest storm since whenever. I think it's the biggest floods in Greece ever, isn't it? So the storm Daniel went across Greece and Bulgaria and caused these floods, and then it got to Libya,
yeah,
which has been absolutely devastating.
mm.
It started on the 4th, I think, of September, and it carried on until, I mean, what of the 8th or 9th. So it was during that, it was that Jupiter station again.
Yeah,
Brought,
yeah,
brought that storm.
yeah. Yeah, in Taurus, isn't it? It is about, I mean, it's interesting that we've got so many planets at the moment, the slower moving planets. We've got Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, one of the earth signs, Saturn, Neptune in Pisces, one of the water signs, all retrograde. And it's kind of like just so much being unsettled or coming up, or kind of disasters around earth and water, very much kind of foreground right now. So, I mean, huge loss of life as well. I mean, the situation in Libya, I mean, they have no idea how many people have gone. Entire neighborhoods.
Horrendous.
Yeah, and that's, there's also, it's not just about the sort of, you often think it's kind of like the earth shouting at us, isn't it? Take care, take care. But that was also, it's also man-made issues, isn't it, around the dams that were, below.
Then there was the earthquake in Morocco as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was, I do have an exact time for that, which is the 8th of September at 23:11 local time. At which point, so we have that, so Jupiter has stationed, Uranus is stationed, they've both turned retrograde. They're actually in aspect to Neptune, the Lord of the Sea, but he's also known as the Earth Shaker. And they're also making a sort of pattern with the nodes of the moon, which are the eclipse points at that point. But all of those are kind of outer planets. What happened at 23:11 was that Mars, the planet of action, and the moon made a square aspect to each other. And that seems to have sort of triggered the whole thing, set the whole thing off. And they make an aspect to each other and to Saturn and Pisces. So there's so as you were saying, Sally, it's the intense watery sign of Pisces and the intense earthy sign of Taurus are actually always in nice aspect to each other. They're two signs away from each other, which is the sextile aspect, which is considered positive, but it does mean that they can positively work together. And currently, and for the next 18 months or so, the nodes are going through Aries and Libra, so they're right in between those two. And the nodes are the eclipse points.
But I think also what's interesting about this is it's kind of, we've had this, suddenly everything turned retrograde, didn't it? I wonder whether it's this turning retrograde. I mean, if you think about, well, how retrograde planets work on a personal level, they sort of turn your attention inwards. So, I'm thinking kind of on a planet level, retrograde planets, they've been turning the attention inwards, like under the earth, and almost literally shaking under the earth, moving, destructively moving the earth. I mean, I think that's also fascinating about this. So yeah, I mean, a huge month going on. And can I just sort of say one more little personal story, because my trip to Greece went fantastically and all was well for me until I got back and I got a delay on the plane, which wasn't too bad. It was an hour, but I got home to find out that my power had tripped during the week when I was away, and we've had a heat wave here in the UK. So I imagine it was the beginning of the week, which meant my freezer and fridge had been switched off, and there was the most unbearable smell because all the food in the freezer had gone off. So, and this was, I got back about midnight, which was 2:30 a.m. Greek time, and wanting to go to bed, but I had to spend the next half hour cleaning out this fridge. And I was like, Mercury, it's enough now. It's enough. Yeah. We need to turn direct and just stop this nonsense. I mean, and food as well. It's kind of foodstuffs, isn't it, Virgo? So yeah, there was a big clean out on a personal level. So personal and global stuff really, really showing during this kind of crazy retrograde season.
Yeah, which is, I think everything has got into its retrograde stride by the time we So, we're looking at the month ahead from the 23rd of September when, when the equinox begins. Everything has kind of switched round by then, for the time being. Shall we look at the equinox chart? Or
well, should we talk about Libra itself first? Do we just want to do that? Talk about Libras, or do you want to go straight into the equinox? What would you like to do? Let's just discuss this between us as it's Libra season. Let's make sure we're in agreement.
We can look at the equinox chart and talk about Libra at the same time. What a great sign. It's the sign of the scales. It's the sign of weighing things up. It's just after the halfway point through or it is the halfway point through the year, which is the equinox itself, really. 23rd of September, when the sun moves into this seventh sign. And Libra is a really interesting sign because it's actually represented by a mechanical device, which seems to me very strange compared to all the other signs, which are, animals and people and creatures and monsters. And then you have the scales. What's that about? It's so strange that you suddenly have that man-made. It's a cultural object, right? And I think that this is and this is why we could associate Libra with justice and fairness, the weighing things up. Yes. And if you look at ancient Egyptian, if you've been around those temples and you've looked at, there's a lot of pictures of
the scales,
weighed of scales. Often it's the heart, the person's heart in the underworld versus the feather of truth. How good have you been? How bad have you been? Yeah. And at this time of year also, it's the Jewish New Year. It comes at this point, at the equinox, where you have the Day of Atonement, and you look back at the previous year and you kind of say sorry to the people that, for the bad things that you've done, and then you wipe the slate clean and you go on to the next year. And I think that's quite interesting that this happens at this point in the year. That it's not, when you might expect it sort of in spring, but it's at the opposite point of the year from spring.
Yeah, and it is, it's a good thing. We're halfway through the astrological year, so it is a good time to look back, isn't it, and consider how far you've come, and then to look ahead. I mean, these turning points, the equinoxes and the solstices, they always begin a new 3-month season. So it is this theme of looking ahead. I mean, I love Libra. My moon is in Libra. My daughter's a Libra. It's one of my favorite star signs, actually. And, lovely Libra, also lazy Libra. But Libra at its best, they're just charming, lovely. They gift you, they compliment you, they sort of, and they're social.
It's one of the social signs, isn't it? My mother was a Libra, and she was really excellent at, sending cards and sending flowers, and actually flower arranging. She was a great cook. She was an incredible sort of hostessy person. But it's also a political sign.
It is the strategist.
Strategists. We have a lot of politicians, especially in this country, who are Librans.
Yeah.
Because it's a sign that's about debate. And I often find, it's a cardinal sign as well, which people forget. This is a sign that actually, so cardinal signs are there 4 of them. They're, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer. These are signs of leadership.
Yeah.
So Librans, people always think that Librans are going to always be equivocating. Actually, they may be kind of manipulating you into doing what they want
in a very charming way.
Yeah, you
don't know that sometimes.
Exactly. You didn't realize that's what you wanted until they told you that's what you wanted, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Thatcher, of course, the one I always have to mention, is a great example of a Libran.
Yeah.
Mrs. Thatcher, and of course she had Saturn rising. I can't remember what her or Mars rising. She had a very kind of strong.
Saturn Scorpio on the ascendant.
Yeah.
the iron glove. So her Libra sun had some edge to it, that's for sure. But yeah. And also judges, they make great judges, don't they? There's I always think of Judge Judy is a Libra, and Simon Cowell, if you're going to take, another kind of judge. I mean, they do make great judges, diplomats, mediators, lawyers, but also ruled by Venus. So there's they can be wonderful sort of architects and designers too. It's a really interesting star sign.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting that you bring up the judges, because it's true. And again, that goes against the stereotype of Libras that they're indecisive. No, they're not. They're not indecisive. They make the decision eventually, but they do weigh everything up. So it's not, they're kind of the opposite of that Aries. Oh, I just have this I'm making this instinctive choice. No, a Libra is going to go through all the arguments and then make the decision.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, there's we had on the course when we were trying to decide where to go for dinner, and it turned out all of us, the 6 of us who were trying to decide, either had the sun, moon, or ascendant in Libra. And there was a lot of, I really don't mind, I could go to either place, and wanting to sort of, I think often this indecision is because they're very happy for the other person to decide, and there's a kindness around it sometimes, whatever's better for everyone. But if you get 6 people with Libra going, whatever's better for everyone, it's like, right, someone needs to make the decision.
And who made the decisions in the end?
Well, actually, it was a Virgo who made the decision. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was going to cut in with my ascendant Aries, if it went on for too long.
I was going to say, Sally, come on. I know you got the moon in Libra, but you're a very decisive person, actually.
I can be decisive, I can. It's true. It's true. So shall we have a look at the equinox chart when the sun is at 0 degrees Libra? So this is the start of a new 3-month cycle, really moving into autumn or the fall in the northern hemisphere, and the opposite seasons down under. So there is the sun in Libra for those of you who are watching this on the YouTube channel. And the sun is in Libra, quite hidden away in this equinox chart in the 12th house. So what's this hidden theme going on in the 3?
Yeah. It does mean that there's also Libra rising and Mars in Libra and South Node in Libra.
Yeah.
And Pallas Athena in Libra as well. So it's quite a Libra heavy stuff. And what strikes me most about this chart and the upcoming season, so this is a predictor for the coming 3 months, is that we're getting into eclipse season, right? Because that's where the nodes are.
Yep.
We've got an eclipse coming up in October, and the eclipses from now on for the next 18 months or so are in Aries or Libra. That's where they will be. I think there's one last one in Taurus coming up, but
yes, there is. Next time we'll be talking about that's the final one in the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle. Will come when the sun is in Scorpio. I mean, you can always locate the eclipses by where the sun sign is, can't you? When the sun's in Libra, now we're going to get these Aries Libra eclipses, and when it's in Aries, we're going to get these Aries Libra eclipses. It's at those 2 pivotal points in the year.
Yeah, and also where the nodes are. So this coming the Taurus one is like an out of sign eclipse, if you know what I mean. But and to me, that's the striking thing about the next few months, is that now we're really getting our feet under the table with the Libra Aries eclipses. And also that there's a fieriness with that Mars rising in the equinox chart. So things are going to happen, and it looks political to me. There's going to be political negotiation, whether that's personal or public, but there's going to be a lot of back and forth. It also looks, Mars in Libra kind of dominates the thing in a way for me. And Mars in Libra is said to be, not in its own sign and, in its opposite sign, so not particularly happy, etc. I like Mars in Libra. because you get a lot of kind of peace warriors with Mars and Libra, John Lennon, blah blah blah, etc. John Lennon, Mahatma Gandhi. I want to say Martin Luther King, but I'm not sure about that. It can be someone who is a fierce negotiator, a good lawyer. Yeah. So there will be legal cases that are being fought under this. But there's also a sense of fairness about that, I think.
And it's interesting, actually, that you bringing this up, because it makes me, I'm looking at the moon in this chart as well. The moon is in Capricorn. Again, there's one of the cardinal signs, the star sign that's linked to kind of governments. It rules the midheaven of this chart, this Cancer on the midheaven, but it's down, kind of, it couldn't be, closer to the bottom of the chart and square to that sun. So, it's also about, I think this is about the earth. So maybe what's been happening, there's I know there was a big demonstration going on globally against fossil fuels, one earth, one chance. I think there will also be more people sort of negotiating around what's happening in the world as well, and demanding in some way for governments to create change, maybe. But yeah, that seems to fit the theme of what you're talking about and what you're saying this equinox chart is bringing to life.
Yeah, I would say territorial negotiations as well, like quite simply borders and things.
Yeah.
To do with that moon at the bottom of the chart. I'm not sure what's happening. There have been so many coups in Africa in the last 6 months. It's hard to keep up with, what's happening there. But the whole of that Sahel region has changed hands, so to speak. So I think that's quite interesting as well. This idea of negotiating, changing hands. Putin, of course, is a Libra.
Yeah, he is.
Speaking of politicians who are Librans, and what he says goes. I can't see him saying, "Oh, I don't know where I'm going to go to dinner. Where should we go? Oh, it's okay," says Putin. You choose.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We don't know what he's like in his personal life. Maybe that's why he's all vacillating and dithering. He just comes into his own on the world sphere.
Yeah, maybe he does.
Well, yeah.
Okay, shall we talk about the other things happening in the month ahead? Shall I get the other charts up there? Because the next thing that happens is pretty quick.
Because we've got a full moon coming up at the end of September. I have to say, I'm kind of finding it this year is whizzing by so quickly. It's very, and I think maybe this was part of this retrograde season as well. I'm thinking end of September. How can that be right, that we're moving into this new phase? It feels very odd. I don't know if other people are having that. Hopefully we'll sort of, maybe Libra season will help us kind of get a bit straight about what's happening. We'll have to see. But yeah, there's we've got the full moon in Aries on September the 29th. So the sun moves into Libra. It gets to 6 degrees Libra. And then it meets the moon at 6 degrees Aries, right across my ascendant-descendant axis, actually.
Ooh, Sally, what's going to happen?
I do not know. There's going to be some partnership stuff going on, aren't there? Well, it's actually, interestingly enough, I'm kind of in negotiations about different contracts and partnerships. So, it is a theme moving into Libra season for me, getting things signed and sealed now. Mercury's turned direct, actually. So that's probably part of it. It's these key partnerships and our lovely partnership, Christina. I mean,
I hope so. I mean, it's interesting, actually, because it is, just to talk about me for 1 millisecond. Yes. I do feature in that, if this is across because I have Pallas Athena in the heart of my sun, Cazimi. And I can see that Pallas Athena features in this full moon. It's making a conjunction with the sun at the full moon. Mm-hmm. And Pallas Athena is the asteroid of wisdom, you'll be glad to hear, and pattern finding and astrologers, actually.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that you, as an Aries rising, so you're going to have the full moon on your actual ascendant, are making some kind that there's business going on with another astrologer. Me.
It is you, Christina.
Me. But let's just think what also this might mean for other signs as well.
Well, just can I just say, if you're Aries or Libra, look at the partnerships in your life. This is a great time to be negotiating partnerships for, creating strong partnerships or joint ventures or whatever in your life on this full moon. Definitely.
Yeah, or one comes to a culmination, so it's like it would be a culmination and like maybe going into a new phase, right? So you've completed one phase, you're going on to the next, which is kind of nice. And also, I mean, for people who have, for Capricorns and Cancers, this is an important full moon because it's on an important angle of your chart, right? So for Capricorns, the full moon actually falls at home, in your home sector. So you're thinking about, the family. And you may want to spend that full moon with the family, with the tribe. It's a sort of tribal full moon for Capricorns. And for Cancerians, it's the other way around, so to speak. It's all about the getting out there. And it's a full moon where you may have some culmination or something important happens to do with your status.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of other things that are going on in this. I'm just aware that on the day of the full moon, so this brings a different sort of edge to the full moon. We've got the Venus. Venus is in Leo, still completing her journey through Leo. I mean, she's out of the underworld and back into the world in a way with her direct, but she only moves on from Leo, doesn't she, at the beginning of October. But she's exactly square to Uranus on this as well, applying really close as square aspect to Uranus. So I'm thinking for also Leo and Taurus, what is this about? It is something that may come to a head. Again, probably around relationships, love, money, and things could, full moons bring emotion, they bring drama. So it may also be a time, you can be forging partnerships on this full moon, but there could be some kind of split or decision to move away from someone or something as well. So it's really interesting to have a close Venus-Uranus square aspect on the same day as the full moon. It's a lot of action around our close relationships, our partnerships during this period.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about to mention just in this period now that we're discussing between the 23rd of September and when Venus leaves Leo is that Venus, which is in the first week of October, I think, is that we're completing this cycle of this long Venus through Leo transit. And so all the stuff that happened over the summer, whether that was to do with finances or your love life, which are the two most likely things.
Yeah.
Or to do, I mean, I've found a lot of people who've had stuff going on with their adult children. Also, there's been relationship crises around adult children. And I do think this is to do with the Venus retrograde in Leo. That you may have changed your mind about something. You're going to be making decisions now, and it's like the results are coming in.
Yeah.
So the results of stuff that happened in the summer are coming in this last week of September and that first week of October. And it's interesting, as you say, that there's this square again to Uranus. So I think this is the third time that Venus has squared Uranus over the last few months. And that can be, the Venus-Uranus combination is a shock, but sometimes it's like a shock of love, you're like falling in love, a sort of violent awakening of love. It may be that, or it may be some kind of financial shock, depending on where it falls in your chart. And I would say that obviously for Leos, this is important. And there's a certain amount of clarity, I think, that may have come to people over the summer and then over the Mercury retrograde in September. And now you're taking action on the clarity around these themes. So for Leo, it might just be, that you're going to dye your hair pink from now on. It could be actually your physical appearance has changed in some way, that you're redoing your wardrobe. I don't know. And that you've now decided to present yourself as a ballet dancer for the rest of the, for the next 2 years or whatever it is. But for other sign, or for Aquarius, is definitely about your important one-to-one relationships.
Yeah, it is. And also, I mean, it's, as you said, the Venus has been squaring both Jupiter and Uranus. 3 hits on both, 3 times this square's happened, which to me, there's an extravagant edge to that, but there's also a need to kind of cut back on things to see a way out of a problem as well. And this full moon could bring that. Also for Leo, I'm thinking, because the Jupiter, Uranus are in your career sector, it's how do you find a way maybe to break out of a contract or to break out of a job that, where you want more freedom. How are you able to do that now? And then also, if you're looking at it from the other way for Taurus, I mean, it's been such a kind of rebellious phase for Taurus, for many Taurians, or, being able to do stuff that's independent, having Jupiter and Uranus in your star sign. That, again, is something to do probably with home and family, finding maybe a solution to get out perhaps of a contract or a situation that's had you tied in. And very often these things can be linked to money as well, linked to finances, because of Venus, and also because Taurus is one of the money signs. So during this full moon, it's kind of like it's that final square that's been playing out over the last few months, being able to break free.
It's interesting that it's breaking free. Because I think it's also about realizing, it's the tender trap, isn't it? Love is the tender trap that you maybe don't want to break free. Because these planets are actually retrograde, Jupiter and Uranus, or that the negotiations that you've been undertaking over the summer, because Venus is also about negotiating to a certain extent. Venus and Mercury both are, but that the negotiations are now coming to fruition. You're actually going to produce the product that you've been negotiating about. And that to me is slightly, for Leos, that might be the thing as well. But I'm interested for Aquarians because Uranus is one of the rulers of Aquarius. And so you've got the Venus squaring Uranus yet again. And I'm sure that for Aquarians this summer, I mean, talking to Aquarians has been going quite deep into a particular relationship, whether that's with a real person or with a person who's passed on, or with your own relationship with relationships, which sounds a little bit complex, but your own relationship with relationships. You maybe have been rethinking that. And for Aquarians, it's all of these stations of Uranus and Jupiter have been quite tricky because they're on the very foundations of your life. There's been upheaval, there's been change.
Yeah. And the other thing that during this, because full moons are often about relationships, aren't they? So, and Uranus is often about the unexpected. So during this full moon and this Venus square Jupiter and Uranus, it may be that it's other people's actions, other people's decisions impact your own life too. It's kind of, the third party comes in and makes it a situation where you have to change. You have to readjust your perspective, your position, your situation in some way. I think there's probably a theme of that around this full moon too. But I like what you say about creating and producing, because Mercury is also completing its journey at the moment through Virgo. I mean, Mercury leaves Virgo on October the 5th Venus leaves Leo October the 9th. So there's this sense of tidying things up after this retrograde phase. And Mercury makes, it makes a lovely aspect to Jupiter on the 25th and Uranus on the 30th. So it is some things that are coming to fruition as well. And some things that you can kind of sort out. For Virgo in particular, it might be sorting out kind of travel plans or study plans as well. So the spotlight of this full moon is quite hopefully bringing clarity to some situations.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of rethinking, in the past few months because of these personal planets retrograding, especially, anybody Venus ruled, that's Libra and Taurus, or Mercury ruled Virgo and Gemini. And now we're starting this new phase, having rethought everything. And I can have an example of that, actually, which is that my second daughter, is about to go to university for the first time. And she thought she was going to one university, but she's going to a different one. And her term actually starts pretty much on this full moon. Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning, and that's the Mercury retrograde is over now. She knows where she's going. Off she goes. Very sort of course, it's a great social start to a university term with all these planets in Libra.
Yeah. Yeah, it is forging new relationships, new partnerships, isn't it, as well?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting full moon. The other thing that, it's, particularly when you're looking at a chart, like those of you who are looking at this, it's so interesting at the moment that we've got here Uranus at 22 Taurus, Neptune at 26 Pisces, Pluto at 27 Capricorn. It's like, you've got to go through these different stages at the moment. The generational planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, are very closely in alliance in a way, aren't they? There's something working together. So it's like you have to go through these different stages as the planets move through. And like Mercury, as it completes its journey through Virgo, it's going to trine Uranus, oppose Neptune, trine Pluto. So it's some things that can be put in place that are being grounded, that are being established, and other things letting go of will dissolve the Neptune. So it really is a time to kind of sort things out, what stays, what goes as well.
And this sort of triple thing that's happening, the Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are basically in a little mini trine sort of aspect, right? Mini grand trine. And I think that was triggered, the earthquake and the floods that we've just discussed actually was partly to do with that, because they're working in cooperation with each other. And cooperation is not always, good in human terms, but, that's a coordinated effort. So if you have any stuff, any planets or your sun around that 27, between 22 and 27 degrees of any of those signs, that's Taurus, Pisces, Capricorn, or their kind of opposite signs, you're kind of in the lap of the gods, so to speak. You're in the power of these very powerful outer planets at the moment. And of course, we're about to have the Pluto. When does Pluto? Yeah, Pluto goes direct on the 11th of October. Yeah. And it's come back to 27 degrees now. 27 degrees Capricorn. This is incredibly important. It's the last time it's going to be at 27 degrees. It's going to move on. And when it comes back into Capricorn next year, briefly, it won't go back that far again. So it's still in this finishing off phase. And it's interesting that it's also, the Mercury retrograde is finishing stuff off and going to be trining it. So there may be literal like paperwork that's being done that's to do with some very long process, but a long process that began in 2008 is finishing off. And now Pluto will turn around, and it's when a planet stations at standstill, it's intense. There's an intensity as it kind of drills down into a particular degree of the zodiac. And this is 27 degrees, right? So every earth sign is going to be feeling that. That's Virgo and Taurus and Capricorn will be feeling that powerfully. And it may be very empowering, right? So it's kind of, there feels like a decisiveness about this. And one of the things about Pluto is also that it's about getting rid of stuff, among other things. It's about letting go, getting rid of things. And I would think, interestingly enough, with all this political stuff going on that we think, Libra season tends to be very political. It's when Parliament comes back in this country. It's during Libra season. All the universities go back. The courts are back in session. With all of this political stuff going on, there's kind of an earthquake rumbling around with that Pluto in Capricorn, which empowers the Capricorns, but also reveals some things that may have been hidden.
Yeah. And it's also square to the nodes, isn't it, as well? I mean, the nodes during this full moon, they're at 24 Aries Libra, and the Pluto, triggering that point. So there is something kind of quite fated about that combination. I mean, Pluto is a big theme of this month coming up, particularly as we move into October. Towards October the 23rd, we move into Scorpio season, the sun moving into Scorpio. But we're going to be feeling Scorpio season before then, because Pluto turns direct on the 10th, is it? On the 11th. On the 11th. And Mars, which is Scorpio's traditional planet, moves into Scorpio on the 12th. So it's a real, this Scorpio season is coming early. I mean, I just want to say one thing about Pluto, because I think it's often a planet that's feared. He is god of the underworld. And we often talk about him sort of, there's a sense of clearing things out. And he can be kind of the wipeout planet. It's about destruction. Pluto was discovered, at the same time as nuclear power, also the planet of psychoanalysis. I thought it was really interesting, and this shows another side to Pluto. And I was doing sports predictions in astrology, so this is sort of linked to that. But when Pluto went back and forth over Djokovic's Capricorn ascendant, during that period, he won all 4 Grand Slams back to back. So you'd think Pluto would be, wipe him out. It might be injury, but no, it was this flip side of Pluto that is this real, it can give you laser focus, resilience, this refusal to give up. You will really go for something, and that kind of powering through. So, just to remember with these, particularly the slow moving planets, they have these flip sides, don't they? They play out in different ways.
Oh, well, I think Pluto is empowering. It's empowering, especially with this third go over these points. So you may have been wiped out, before, but now it's empowering for sure. And I also think it's really empowering depending on what Pluto does in your own chart, right? But yeah, no, I've seen it work really well for people and really badly. I always think of both Gordon Brown and Ed Miliband, the leaders of the Labour Party. They both had Pluto go over the midheaven, and that was it. Their careers were finished.
Yeah. Wipe out.
Wipe out.
Me too. Same. Pluto over my midheaven. I lost 2 of my big media astrology contracts back in the day. Wipe out. Had to reinvent myself. So yeah, I agree. That's very much how it can play out too.
But usually, it's also the Phoenix, isn't it? It's like, okay, you're wiped out. Now pick yourself up. You're not kind of completely flattened forever. It's like, now you reinvent yourself. You're someone new. And I think for those earth signs in particular, if you've got anything at 27 degrees, it's really interesting to have this Pluto, and actually probably helpful and supportive. The Pluto, intense Plutonic energy, which is, as you say, focused this month, but also for water signs. I mean, so for Pisces, if you have anything in late Pisces, it's getting this dynamic, supportive, transformative sextile from Pluto.
And Scorpio.
Yep, absolutely. Scorpio, especially because it's one of your ruling planets. You're getting this fantastic sextile. If you've got anything in late Scorpio, it's focus on it. allow it to transform. I mean, the mistake one can make with Pluto is to try and hang on to the past. And actually, you have to move on. You have to move forward.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a Scorpio theme, isn't it? It's the theme of that. Any Scorpio I know has had to start over in some way in their lives. You have to put the past behind you and move into a new chapter. I mean, the trickiest star sign, I mean, this, Cancer, Capricorn, you've got Pluto at the very end of your star signs. So for Cancer, this could be a time to think about, it's time to move on from a relationship or a situation where there's an imbalance of power and control as well with that, more difficult, I think, with the opposition.
I agree. I think the opposition is harder than the conjunction can be great, but the opposition is hard. The quincunx, interestingly, is also can be tricky.
The quincunx it's not the star sign opposite you, it's the one to either side, and it's something of a blind spot, isn't it? The quincunx. It's something you're not seeing clearly, I always think.
Yeah, so the quincunx that comes from this Pluto is aimed at Leo and Gemini, right? So, when my partner at that time had the quincunx from Pluto to his sun several times, he's a Leo. And literally someone came from nowhere and pushed him off his bicycle as as he was cycling down the road in front of a bus. And he could have died. He didn't die, but it was a stranger, right? This is a stranger came and pushed him off his bike, who actually, interestingly, plutonically, actually went to jail for it, because it was an aggravated assault. Okay. But that is a literal blindsided. He was blindsided. He didn't see it come. My partner David didn't see it coming. And also it was random, a totally random thing. That's very quincunxy. Sorry, that's rather dramatic and negative thing. But that's an example of Pluto at work.
Yeah, and life is light and dark, isn't it? We know that. Astrology reminds us of that. I think we should move on, because we got very excited about this full moon and what's coming with Pluto's move, turning direction, Mars moving into Scorpio. And then we have the eclipse, don't we? We've got a solar eclipse coming this month, the second eclipse in the Aries Libra cycle. The first one was, it was in March, a lunar eclipse on March 25th. No, wrong. I'm on the wrong year here. It was a solar eclipse on April 20th. Earlier this year was the first eclipse in this Aries Libra cycle. And we've got the second one coming up on 14th of October. Really interesting, this new eclipse cycle, because they're mainly solar eclipses, which I kind of feel are often easier than lunar eclipses. In some way, they often feel like new moons with extra oomph. It's sort of accelerated growth. Always with eclipse season, you're on a roller coaster ride. It's a time when things change quickly. So these eclipses, the Aries Libra eclipses, are triggering points in your horoscope. Then things are going to change fast. And for Aries Libra, obviously, it's a time when, you can rise to fame, or you can fall down. I mean, it's sort of ups and downs of life, isn't it? Eclipse season. Yeah.
And for, there are a couple things about this eclipse. I mean, it's pretty tight to the nodes, so it's quite a big one. It's pretty tight to Mars, even though Mars has gone into Scorpio, and it makes an exact, again, we're back on the quincunx, to Uranus, the planet of change. Uranus is the awakener, it's the on-off switch. It's going to bang, something's going to turn off or something's going to turn on. And it's interesting because I think it might actually be really powerful for Taurians. This is actually really triggering that Uranus in a very unexpected way, and it's maybe something to do for Taurus. It may be something at work. That's where this is in your daily life. Yeah. I would be cautious around this eclipse, slightly because it's got a lot of power behind it, hasn't it? It's in this sandwich between Mars and Mercury. So there's a kind of speed to it, a speed of action, a speed of evolution. And for Geminis, I think this could be quite an interesting one. I like it for Geminis. It's exciting, but it's very, very social. And it may be a coup de foudre. You may fall in love, I think. Or it may be because it's in this it may be some kind of amazing creative breakthrough. It may be that you suddenly get pregnant after trying a long time, or even after not trying at all. You get pregnant by accident. There's a sense of something incredible beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it is the quincunx to the Uranus. I'm interested as well what this means maybe for Pisces. I mean, it's not. I mean, I like to use a close orb of 2 degrees for a quincunx, but because Uranus and Neptune are working together at the moment, it also does, it does focus on Pisces, and this is falling in your hidden sector. It's kind of a hidden side of life, but also sort of joint finances. It's about maybe renegotiating finances as well for Pisces during this time. Mercury in there, it's about talking things through, getting the best deals, that kind of feel to this as well.
It's interesting. So back on this quincunx theme, basically, this eclipse is in a kind of, it's focused. So it's got Neptune on one side and Uranus on the other side, focusing straight into this eclipse, right? And Neptune is from Pisces and Uranus is from Taurus. And again, I mean, I'm thinking again about these natural upheavals that we've seen.
Yes.
But that it echoes again what was happening at the beginning of September slightly, but maybe even more so. There's some big upheaval actually with this eclipse, and because it's in Libra, it's which is the sign that's trying to balance things, it's trying to create harmony, but the eclipse is disruptive, right? So things go out of whack on this eclipse, I think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's, as this eclipse, because often it's not a good date to do something on an eclipse, is it? It's a shadowy feel around eclipses, and you wait and see what happens once the shadow of the eclipse lifts. It's not long after this eclipse. It's actually it's a week later, on the 21st of October, that both the Sun and Mercury together make a square aspect to Pluto as well. So, I mean, this is, that can be a tough square. It's what has to go, what doesn't work out. So again, there's some negotiating that needs to be done during this eclipse, but not everything will come to pass. I think for me, some of this month is about, it's shedding certain things. It's looking at which doors are closed as well. And once you let go of certain stuff, then you have more energy to put into other areas of your life, or to focus into what is working well. So we're getting a real kind of, Pluto is often about change and transformation. Eclipse season is often about change and transformation. This kind of something that's hidden that you let go of, something that's new. Really a deep time of transformation we're moving into.
And it is quite kind of boom, 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 isn't it? Because so we have Pluto turns direct, Mars changes signs, and we have the eclipse. So this middle period of October, who knows what's going to happen? Stay on your toes.
Yeah.
You don't have much control of the situation, really, unless you're unless you're kind of releasing something into the wild. That's what it feels like to me.
It's time to get your big girl pants on as well, isn't it? Pull them up.
Yeah.
Deep breaths. We're going for this. So yeah, it's quite an interesting season coming up. I mean, eclipse season always is. It always is. And again, eclipses, I think the thing to remember, sometimes come out of the blue with eclipses. You don't know exactly where change is coming. And that's the theme of eclipse season. I think they often work in a way a bit like Uranus. They're the two sort of astrological events that you've just got to be ready. You've got to be prepared for what's coming.
There's a kind of, in the background, by the way, sort of this month, there's this slow move of Saturn's retrograde in Pisces, and it's getting to 0 degrees of Pisces.
Yeah.
Which is going to affect, all of the mutable signs like Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces, in particular, Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, right? Yes. So wherever you have been experiencing that Saturnian feel, which is a bit depressing sometimes, or having to slow down, or having to be more disciplined, or having to take on a lot of responsibility, that may have felt quite burdensome, I guess. So, for example, Sagittarius may have had, an elderly parent that you have to look after, for example, or some business around your home that has been, or your family that has been heavy.
Yeah.
Or you may have been stuck at home, Sagittarius, in a way that you don't want. That is a sort of continuing thing with that Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn is going to be in Pisces for quite a long time. So what this retrograde is doing is kind of bedding you in and getting you used to it. But I would say that, so for quite a few people, you might have had some experience of this sort of 0 Pisces feeling, the Saturn at 0 Pisces, earlier in the year, back in March. And it's sort of coming back again. And I think Saturn doesn't go direct yet, but it's nearly at the end of that retrograde.
Yeah. I find it quite interesting with this Saturn that it goes right back to, I think it's 0-30. It's sort of, but it's business now is in Pisces, isn't it? It's not going back into Aquarius. It's business is in Pisces. And it will turn direct next month when we're in Scorpio season. So, it is time, what needs to be reoriented, what situation needs to change. I think for Sagittarius, you're spot on with the home and family stuff. I know a lot of Sagittarians where that has been their main focus. But maybe for Sagittarius as well, you've got Jupiter in Taurus, your work sector, and Venus moving into Virgo will pick up that Jupiter. Again, that's towards the end of this month, on the 22nd. But maybe it's time to start thinking about your own future path, put more energy into who you are, where you're heading now as well.
And, the point is also that the Saturn and Jupiter are working well together, aren't they? So there's support for Sagittarius, there may be support from home to do with work. Maybe you're working from home. I mean, that's an obvious one. Like every other person is working from home now, aren't they? But that works well, but you need to make a commitment to it, because the other thing that Saturn is about commitment, so you're committed to that, living in that place, or committed to leaving it, actually.
So do you, like with eclipses, wherever the nodes are, I mean, this is a south node eclipse, isn't it? So I mean, for me, often when you get a south node eclipse, it's not what's kind of coming in or what's new. It's sort of what you're releasing, letting go of. So for Libra, it's kind of, again, there's this feel of what can you do to create more space in your life? And I think a lot of us need that, actually. We need to sort of be looking at what we shared, so we can be more focused on the things that are working. And for Libra in particular, I think this is a really powerful eclipse for that. It may be connected to relationships. I mean, the Aries Libra axis is always about, there's independence and who I am with Aries. And then there's how you love, how you connect, how you share your time, how you spend your time with others as well. But it's about getting that balance right. So it works for you. It's quite an interesting month coming up, isn't it, this one?
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful month, and it's coming on the heels of this this summer or this season with the Leo, I mean, I found the Venus in Leo retrograde and then direct incredibly important, and for loads of people that I've spoken to, it's really been a game changing in some part of their life, and this, but the transformation that is coming out of that change really gets some grit to it, really bites, the cogs start to come together in this October, essentially. So the changes that you knew were coming, that you've been maybe organizing, that have been, on the cards, that, you've been sort of trying to deal with over the summer. Now you begin to see what the results are going to be, right?
Yeah.
And they may not be what we expected.
No.
Right? So there's something very unexpected or sideways to do with this eclipse, but also to do with the, you cannot predict really what's going to happen with a Pluto direct. Especially because of we've seen what Pluto's been doing in Capricorn for the last decade, what it's been doing in governments, and how the power on the planet has shifted in terms of who's running the show.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say, and on a personal level, this does feel like a month to make it is a time to make some tough decisions as well, I think, moving forward, again, depending on what happens. Often as astrologers, we say during retrograde season, try and, take your time. Don't make those big decisions. But this is the time. This month is.
Yeah, it's happening. And whether you like it or not, I would also say decisions are going to be made.
Yes, they are.
Whether you like it or not, here they come. And you're going to start to see those results.
Yeah.
Wow, what a month. We've made it sound kind of really serious, Sally.
Well, I think it is. I mean, big girl pants on this month. It really feels like that. It's kind of, and whenever you're moving into eclipse season, it is a time to sort of get some deep breathing going on and get active. And of course, next month, Scorpio season, there's another eclipse, the final eclipse of the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle, and we'll be looking at that and see how this month plays out. I'm sure we'll have lots to report back on.
Yeah, great. I look forward to it, Sally. See you next time.
Bye. See you next time. Bye, everybody.